Wolves have long featured in human culture, ever since humanity first left Africa and encountered these impressive canines in the lands of Europe and beyond. This gave rise to both bitter rivalries over resources, but also a rich coexistence in many cultures, and some eventually gave rise to the domestic dog, man's greatest ally. But deep within our collective psyche is a fear of a creature that has features of both wolf and man, something that has roots in almost every culture around the world: the werewolf. Hull, officially known as Kingston upon Hull, is a port city in East Yorkshire, England. Located on the northern bank of the Humber estuary, it sits at the confluence of the River Hull and is approximately 25 miles inland from the North Sea. Established in the 12th century as a port by monks, it played a pivotal role in the maritime trade and the English Civil War, particularly for its strategic location. While the indigenous wolves of the region were extirpated just under 200 years ago, there is a figure that stalks the local folklore and urban legends: the Hull Werewolf. Originating from the area around Hull, this creature has reportedly been sighted in and around the town and its neighbouring villages, particularly in areas like the Barmston Drain, a 19th century waterway near Beverley. Today, we attempt to unravel the mystery surrounding this canine conundrum, as we start with the first testimony from an anonymous witness. It was a cold, damp evening in late October. I remember because the air felt unusually still, like something was holding its breath. I take my dog for a walk along the Barmston Drain. It's not the kind of place you'd expect much. Just a quiet stretch of water with overgrown reeds and the occasional rustle of small animals. But that night, everything felt wrong. My dog Max usually pulls on his lead, sniffing around. He's a curious little terrier, fearless most of the time. But as we walked, he stopped dead in his tracks. Ears went straight up, and he started growling low in his throat. I tried to tug him along, thinking he'd seen a cat or maybe a fox, but he wouldn't budge. And that's when I heard it. A low, guttural growl came from up ahead. Wasn't like anything I'd heard before. Deep, primal, almost like the rumble of thunder. But it had a predatory edge that sent a chill straight down my spine. My first thought that it was a big dog, maybe a stray or one of those dangerous breeds you hear about. But then I saw movement in the shadows. Something stepped out from the tree line on the opposite side of the drain. At first I thought it was a man because it was walking upright. But then I saw the shape of it. It had those tall ankles like a dog's hind legs, and its arms were too long, reaching almost to its knees. The head was massive, with a long snout and ears that twitched as it scanned the area. Its fur was dark, matted and thick, almost blending into the night. But its eyes... God, its eyes were glowing yellow. Not like the reflection you get from animals in the dark. These were alive, burning, like they were staring right into me. I froze. Max started barking like mad, straining his leash to get away, but I couldn't move. I couldn't take my eyes off it. The creature crouched down, and for a terrifying moment, I thought it was going to leap across the water at us. It bared its teeth, sharp, jagged things that looked way too big for its mouth, and it let out a snarl that sounded like a mix of a wolf and something far worse. Then it did something I'll never forget. It stood fully upright, towering over everything around it, and it let out this howl, a long, piercing cry that echoed across the fields. My blood went cold. I grabbed Max and started running as fast as I could. I didn't look back. I didn't want to. I could hear something crashing through the underbrush behind me, but I didn't stop until I reached the road and saw the street lights. When I finally dared to look back, there were nothing there. Just the silence of the night and the sound of my own panicked breathing. But I know what I saw. It wasn't a dog or some wild animal. It was something else. Something that shouldn't exist. And I'll never walk near that drain again. Definitely not after dark. The creature is physically described with humanoid features. Witnesses described the creature as humanoid in structure, standing upright at an imposing height of over 7 feet. But it does have a wolf-like appearance. It has a canine-like face, often compared to a wolf or large dog, with piercing eyes that glow in the dark. Some accounts describe its snout as long, and its teeth as incredibly sharp. It is often depicted as muscular, with broad shoulders and powerful limbs, suggesting both speed and raw strength. The body itself is covered in thick, dark fur, which adds to its wolfish and menacing appearance. Testimony 2 comes from a cyclist. It was around 10:30 at night, a typical late shift at work. I was headed home on my usual route. The path by the Barnston drain is quiet, lined with trees and overgrown bushes, with only the occasional streetlight breaking up the darkness. I liked taking it because it was faster than sticking to the main roads, even though it could get a bit airy at night. But I'd never felt anything like what I felt that night. I'd been riding for maybe 5 minutes when I noticed the silence. Normally, you'd hear something like an owl, the rustling of leaves, maybe the distant hum of traffic. But it was dead quiet, the kind of silence that makes you feel like you're being watched. I tried to shake it off, chalking it up to a long day at work, and I kept pedaling. Then I saw it. Out of the corner of my eye, something moved in the bushes to my left. It was quick, just a flash of black against the undergrowth. At first I thought it was a fox, so I didn't pay it much attention. But as I rode on, I realised it was keeping pace with me, darting in and out of the shadows, just far enough away that I couldn't get a clear look. My heart just started pounding. I sped up, thinking I could outrun it, but it didn't fall behind. Instead, it moved faster, staying parallel to me, almost like it was toying with me. That's when I started to panic. I could hear the sound of branches snapping and leaves crunching as it moved, and whatever it was big, much bigger than any dog I'd ever seen. I dared to glance over, and that's when I saw it properly. It emerged briefly from the bushes, running low to the ground on all fours. The thing was massive, with a body that rippled with muscle and fur so dark it seemed to swallow the light. But it wasn't just the size that terrified me. It was the way it moved. It wasn't natural, almost like it was too fast and too fluid, like a predator closing in on its prey. And then it stopped suddenly, just as I turned to look, and it stood on its hind legs. It was towering at least 7 feet, maybe more, with shoulders that seemed impossibly broad and arms that hung unnaturally low. Its head was definitely wolf-like, with a long snout, and it had ears that twitched like it was listening for me. But its eyes, they glowed yellow. They locked onto mine, and it felt like I was being hunted. My bike was wobbling beneath me. For a moment, I thought it was going to fall off as it just stood there staring. Then it let out that growl, a deep rumbling that I could feel in my bones. I felt it more than I heard it. It was like it was warning me, telling me to get out. I didn't need to be told twice. I gripped the handlebars and pedaled harder than I ever had in my life. My legs burned, my lungs felt like they were going to explode, but I didn't stop. I didn't even look back. I could hear it crashing through the bushes beside me, but after what felt like an eternity, the sound faded, and I reached the streetlights at the edge of the path. I collapsed right there on the pavement, gasping for air. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. When I finally managed to look back, there was nothing. Just the dark path stretching behind me and the faint rustle of leaves in the distance. It wasn't a dog and it wasn't a man. It was something else. I've never taken that shortcut again, and I've warned everyone I know to stay away from that drain after dark. Some laugh it off, but I can see it in their eyes. They believe me, even if they don't want to admit it. And honestly, I hope they never have to see what I saw. The behavior described of the creature is said to be highly elusive, often appearing at night or in remote, desolate areas. It vanishes quickly after being seen, leading some to believe it's more spirit-like than a physical being. It maintains an aggressive stance. While there are no confirmed reports of attacks, the creature reportedly growls or snarls at those who come too close, instilling fear in the witnesses. Multiple accounts remark on its animalistic agility, leaping great distances and running on all fours when necessary. Our next testimony comes from a fisherman that frequents the area.
It were early morning just before dawn, and the world was still cloaked in darkness. I'd always liked fishing that hour. The quiet was peaceful, and the chances of catching something decent were better when no one else was around. I had my usual spot by the Ormston drain, a little patch of bank that was clear enough to cast out properly but tucked away from the main path. The air was cold that morning, and a thin mist clung to the surface of the water, swirling gently whenever the breeze passed through. I remember thinking how still everything was. No birds, no rustling in the bushes from rats or cats, just the occasional drip of water as it fell from a line. It should have been calming, but it weren't. There was something off about that silence, something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Felt like the world was holding its breath. I was focused on my line when I heard it. A splash, loud and close, like something heavy had just dropped into the water. My first thought was that it might be a large fish or maybe even a deer slipping in to drink. But it weren't just one splash. There was movement, deliberate and rhythmic, like something was wading through the shallows. I froze, gripping my rod tightly. My eyes were scanning the mist for any sign of what it could be. And then a shadow, tall and dark, moving through the fog. It was on the other side of the drain, maybe 30 feet away, but even at that distance I could tell it was no animal I'd ever seen before. It were huge, its outline distorted by the mist but unmistakably standing upright. It moved with a strange deliberate gait, splashing through the water as it came closer to the bank. I sat there too stunned to move as it climbed out of the water. That's when I got my first real good look at it. It were huge, easily 7 or 8 feet tall, really big shoulders and long arms, that's for sure. Its fur was dark, maybe black, definitely matted, dripping with water. Its hands or paws, I don't even know what to call them. They ended in claws that looked sharp enough to tear through anything. Its head was the worst part. Looked like the biggest, meanest husky or a wolf, with the most jagged teeth sticking out. The eyes, so bright yellow, they just cut through the mist and locked onto me, like a cat sizing up a mouse. I should have run. I should have screamed or done something, but I couldn't move. I just sat there, like a deer in the headlights, clutching my rod like it was some kind of shield. The animal sniffed the air, its massive chest rising and falling with each breath, and then it turned its head toward me. For a moment, we just stared at each other. I swear in that instant it knew I was there. It knew I was watching it. And it didn't care. It just growled at me. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to snap me out of my trance. I dropped my rod and stumbled backward, nearly falling into water behind me. The creature didn't move, but its eyes followed me, not blinking a single bit, as I scrambled to my feet and bolted up the bank. I didn't look back. I didn't want to know if it was following me. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. My legs were going to give out, but I kept running until I reached the road. The drain was still shrouded in mist when I looked back. Couldn't see a thing. but I could feel it. I could feel those eyes still on me, watching me from the shadows. I didn't go back for my gear. It's probably still out there, rusting away by the bank. I haven't been fishing since. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't natural. It wasn't something that belonged there. I pray to God I never see it again.
The legend became widely discussed following sightings near the Barmston Drain in the early 2010s. Witnesses claimed to have seen a creature stalking the area, and several reported feeling an intense sense of dread before even seeing anything. Some locals believe the Hull Werewolf is connected to older folklore involving shapeshifters or other supernatural entities like witches. Our final testimony comes from a teenager that had recently moved into the area. The usual Friday night of fun turns into a memory they can never forget. It all started as a joke. Me and my mates, we were hanging out one Friday night, bored out of our minds. Someone brought up the stories about the Hull Werewolf. We'd heard them before, creepy tales about some monster lurking near the Barmston Drain. At first we laughed it off, saying it was just an old legend to keep kids like us out of trouble. But as the night went on, the idea of going out there started to sound exciting. A dare, something to prove we weren't scared. There were 4 of us. Me, Liam, Jess and Ryan. We grabbed some torches and headed out at 11 PM. The drain was only a short walk from Liam's house. It was dark. Darker than I'd expected. No moon, no stars, just pitch black with the faint hum of the town far off in the distance. The path by the drain was overgrown, the kind of place you'd avoid during the day, let alone at night. But we were laughing, trying to spook each other, calling out for the big bad wolf. It felt more like a game than anything serious. That changed as soon as we got closer to the water. The laughter stopped. It wasn't anything we said, it was the atmosphere. The air felt heavy, like it was pressing down on us. Even the frogs had gone silent. Jess whispered something about how it felt like we were being watched, and I told her to shut up. But I felt it too. That prickling on the back of your neck, like someone's eyes are on you, boring into you. And that's when we heard a splash in the water. Faint, but deliberate. It wasn't the sound of a fish or a bird. It was bigger, heavier, like something stepping into a shallow edge of the drain. Liam shone his torch towards the water, and we saw a pair of glowing eyes just above the surface, staring straight at us. I know how a lot of animals reflect light through their eyes, but this felt like the light was coming from its eyes, yellow, burning. Ryan laughed, thinking it was a fox or a dog, but none of us moved. Those eyes didn't blink or shift, they just stared, unflinching. Then the thing rose out of the water. At first it was on all fours, shaking itself off like a wet dog. But it was massive, bigger than any dog I'd ever seen. Its fur was thick and black, clinging tight to its body, and it was jacked, absolutely bursting with muscle. Then it did something none of us expected. It stood up. I'll never forget the sound it made as it straightened its back. A bassy growl that turned into a snarl like it was warning us off. Bloody bugger was tall. It had these claws that glinted in the torchlight, but his face was worse. Somehow, all those teeth jutting out of a wolf's face. We were too scared to run, too scared to even scream. Liam dropped his torch and the beam swung wildly, casting shadows that made the thing look even bigger. He took a step towards us, and that was all it took. We bolted. I don't even remember who started running first, but we sprinted back down the path, crashing through the brush, tripping over ourselves. I could hear it behind us, crashing through the undergrowth. It wasn't even running. It didn't need to. It was following us, letting us know it could catch us if it wanted to. By the time we reached the road, I was out of breath. My chest was burning like it was going to explode. I looked back, half expecting it to be standing there over me. But nothing. Absolutely nothing. Not even a paw print. None of us said anything the whole way home. Liam swore us to secrecy, said no one would believe us anyway. But I can't forget it. I still see those eyes when I close mine. I haven't been near that drain since. I need to move out of here. We thought it was a joke, a bit of fun. But whatever's out there, it's real. And it's watching. There are many explanations and theories as to what the creature could be. The most on-the-nose suggestion is it could be a werewolf in the traditional sense. A human being cursed to transform during the full moon into an anthropomorphic wolf creature. Others propose a previously undocumented cryptid or misidentified known animal, possibly even a relict population of brown bears or grey wolves. Skeptics often argue the sightings could result from mass hysteria, misidentifications, or even elaborate hoaxes. But there is absolutely no doubt about the cultural impact. The Hull Werewolf has become a local curiosity, inspiring paranormal investigators, local storytelling, and media coverage. It draws parallels to other regional myths, such as the Beast of Bodmin Moor, or even the Black Shuck of East Anglia. But one thing is for certain. Whether or not a wolfman is ever confirmed in this region, the tale of the Hull Werewolf will go down in history.